In Onimusha 3, the dreaded warlord Nobunaga returns yet again. The main characters of this series have been utterly unable to stop him once and for all, but this time, for sure, you're going to have to do it. And yet this time, not only does the action take place in medieval Japan, but some of it takes place in modern-day Paris. It seems that Nobunaga has found a way to open these time rifts into the present, so you're going to be fighting demons in modern city streets as well as in the past. Onimusha 3, of course, is the latest action-adventure game in a series that originally debuted as sort of a Resident Evil spin-off. It was a game involving a lot more sword slashing and hacking through demons and things like that rather than conserving ammunition, so the pace has always been much faster, much more action-oriented than in Resident Evil, and that's certainly true in Onimusha 3. At heart, this is basically a pure action game. You're doing a lot of fighting the whole time, but there's also some light puzzle solving and some exploration and some story elements too. The Onimusha series has also always featured impressive production values and lifelike characters, and that's certainly true of this latest chapter. In fact, one of the game's main characters, you'll notice, is the spitting image of actor Jean Reno, who you've seen in movies like The Professional and Mission Impossible and Ronin. Here he plays one of the game's two main characters, the other of which is Samanosuke, who you may recognize from the original Onimusha game. Basically, Samanosuke and Jean Reno's character, whose name is Jacques, end up an unlikely duo. They're both granted the power of the Oni, which gives them the ability to use these elemental weapons and absorb the souls of their fallen enemies. So basically what happens is Samanosuke ends up in the present and Jacques ends up in the past. And they're both trying to defeat Nobunaga and get back to their respective times. The story of the game, it's basically a good setup for a lot of interesting puzzles where you'll actually be transferring items back and forth through the past or into the future and manipulating time that way. But really, the story doesn't go too far, and occasionally it gets off track a little bit, like Jacques' son gets a little too much screen time in the game, and the characters are left to kind of ponder things that don't really seem relevant when they're fighting for their lives. But anyway, this isn't the greatest story ever told, but it's still pretty cool. It's got some funny moments and some interesting moments and a lot of pure action. In addition to the interesting change of scenery, Onimusha 3 offers two main enhancements over its predecessors. One is that it has fully 3D backgrounds this time, whereas the previous games have had 2D pre-rendered backgrounds. And the other is that there's an entirely new and greatly improved control scheme. That's a huge relative improvement on the previous control scheme. In the past, you controlled your main character kind of like a cement truck. It was pretty unwieldy, and though the control scheme worked okay for the Resident Evil series, it was never that great for Onimusha, which sort of encouraged you to be a lot more mobile and maneuverable. Now, basically, the character runs where you aim your analog stick, so it's a lot easier to maneuver about the battlefield. The action is fast and responsive here, and it's very accessible. You could basically just mash on the attack buttons and execute pretty effective combos that way, but there's also some depth here for those of you who want to really get into the game and master some of the intricacies. Basically, this gameplay rewards split-second timing and rewards the sort of actions that the best kinds of action games really encourage you to do. The game is really just as responsive as you are. What happens is you can execute these critical hit moves by timing your attack at the very moment your opponent is about to strike you, or by deflecting the opponent's attack and then attacking immediately. The timing is extremely precise, but you can master it after a while. What happens when you pull these moves off is, not only do you instantly kill the average opponent, but you also generate more soul orbs from the defeated foe, which are basically used as currency, and they also restore your health, so basically you're earning more money in the game by fighting well, and then you could upgrade your weapons and defenses and things like that. Onimusha 3 is a single-player action-adventure game. It'll take you about 15 hours the first time through. The default normal difficulty is well-balanced and provides a good challenge, but there's an easy mode that gets unlocked if you die a number of times. A hard mode also becomes available after you finish the game for the first time. There are plenty of other extras too, such as a side quest involving one of the game's peripheral characters. The game even offers options for the degree to which you want to see violent content, whether you want red or green or no blood, for instance. One option you don't get, though, is an option for the original Japanese voiceover, though the French characters speak in their native language at the beginning and at the end of the game. In the end, Onimusha 3 is an excellent installment in the series. Any fan of the series is going to really enjoy it, but pretty much anyone who likes the idea of this game is going to like it too. And really, its few setbacks are very marginal. Just, you know, you can complain about the voice acting or the story or things like that. But when you get down to the core action and the basic mechanics involved, they all work very, very well. So the game is enjoyable to play for as long as it lasts. So do check it out.